So one of the downsides of pattern recognition is how fear, caution, and intuition can get mixed up, and it's hard to tell which one's which. Hard to discern which one we're feeling at the time. For instance, when I started doing this, I got quite a bit of attention pretty quick. Celebrities, influencers, and it happened over time. But the thing is, I recognize a lot of patterns. I know there's a lot of people in this world. And so when I never read a lot of philosophies. I knew a little bit about Einstein, never really looked much into him. But then I saw the same post over and over and over again saying, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. And at the time when I kept seeing this, I'm thinking this is directed at me. And then I'm thinking, there's a lot of people that this could be directed at. Why am I taking it so personally? And I thought, it's a possibility. And then I thought, caution. I thought, if you jump into a muddy pool, you never know what's in there. And that's not fear. Sometimes that's intuition, pattern recognition, and caution. Because we have this potential where potential is infinite, right? But within systems, they're meant to limit that potential, because when you have potential that can breach, somebody has to know about it, right? Or it can cause complete chaos without you even intending to. It's one of the biggest problems with human complexity. They kept telling us, well, you might think you know, but you don't know. So first I had to get to the bottom of how to show people that we can know things without actually learning them. And so I believe in our biology somewhere we have a library. Look at any animal on this world, and even if they don't have parents, their likeliness of survival might drop, but somehow they still know how to make nests. They still know how to feed their offspring. They know how to do all this. How? Well, because I believe that within our DNA, our ancestors, through their senses, were able to store them patterns somewhere. And so, look at jobs, for instance. I just went for an interview last week at a job that I haven't worked at in 10 years. Thought I'd get back in there. Everybody's saying, well, they'll take anybody. So I go there, I have a couple interviews, and they tell me, well, we're not interested in moving on right now. And the thing is, when I worked at this job the last time, they tried saying that they fired me because I was outside smoking a cigarette, not clocked out. The thing is, my entire team every night went and did their own thing after our work was done. Everything was cleaned up. We had to waste time until it's time for us to clock out. We'd have all our stuff done. Well, my team lead decided to do one more round that night, which threw everything off because third shift was supposed to start that first round in order to keep everything on schedule. So I never expected this. He never told me. He tried calling me on an intercom, and I didn't hear him because, well, this place is so freaking loud. So the next day, I'm told, well, we don't need you anymore. And they said, it's in the handbook that you're supposed to clock out to have a cigarette. The point is that whole thing was just to keep me from getting unemployment. Because it was in the handbook, they could use it. They didn't have to. And so this is the kind of This is the kind of doubt that they intentionally cause on us, because if everybody knows what they're supposed to do, then that sets a blueprint that they gain more understanding in a way that takes away another person's what do you want to call it, their advantage, their psychological advantage. Look at a CEO. He can look at you, see your weaknesses in seconds, know exactly how you can be manipulated, and that's how this works. And that's where a lot of us, we confuse it for fear, but it's actually caution, because we know we can end up in that muddy pool before we realize it. So this is caution. When you feel like you can get dopamine from it, but you hold yourself back, is usually caution. A person that doesn't have pattern recognition as much as us is just going to dive right in and say, well, whatever happens, happens, because we can't predict the future. But within psychology, if you know a person that's going to avoid and why they're avoiding, are they avoiding out of fear, or are they avoiding because they somehow know their potential? Now, a person that knows their potential is not going to fall in line the same way. That goes back to the caution. A person without pattern recognition is more likely to feel fear because they have no idea what's going on. Where people like us, when we look at something, when we analyze something, say somebody's talking to us and they're talking about relationship troubles, and we feel like we know exactly what their problem is, right? It's like your brain is telling you this is what it is, and you spurt it out. Another person looks at you and says, no, that's not it. It's not because you're completely wrong. It's because there's only so many patterns, because no potential is infinite. Neither are patterns. Patterns are not infinite. And if they were, boy, this world would be so much different than it is. Because, see, with our pattern recognition, we tend to look at an idea that was already started and tend to build off that. Why? Because if that idea stuck around, it has to be right in some way, right? Now, with the ecosystem, it's like taking a invasive species and putting it, where it's invasive. So you're taking it out of its area that it's used to, that its biology has constructed it to eat and hunt and sleep, and all these certain patterns, like deer. When people go out deer hunting, if a person knows deer, they're going to find them. Where the person that isn't used to hunting, that doesn't have these tips, they may figure them out over time, but boy, they're going to, the expert hunters, the trained hunters are going to have the advantage. And this is the bosses at work. They have that advantage. When they use pizza parties, they're using those people that appreciate it to look at these other people and say, what more do you think you deserve? How many times have you heard that? But the thing is, we also don't want to bite the hand that feeds us, right? So that's some of where the caution comes in. Because let's say you're a major pattern recognizer with a lot of potential. You feel your intuition, you feel this and that, and the possibilities that can happen. And we don't always know what can happen, everything that can happen. So we rely on patterns. So when you go to this job and you're putting in your resume, putting in your all your stuff, and if you have a record with a lot of things that these people are going to look at, the first thing you're going to think is, I'm probably not going to get this job. I'm going to go for it anyway. And when they don't hire you, you're going to question, why wasn't I hired? My resume wasn't bad. My previous experience is abundant. You're going to say, why did these people not hire me? And one of those possibilities is maybe they had somebody else that they wanted to throw in there first because, they said to somebody else, yeah, I'll get that person in there. You're never going to know that. So is it fear or is it caution in a situation like that? Maybe a little of both. Why? Because pattern recognizers, if you can't recognize a pattern, you're going to overthink it. You're going to overanalyze it, and you're going to think about way more situations than just the one that actually happened. And it's stressful for sure, especially on our psyche. They make us feel like we're crazy. But the thing is, these patterns, as I said, they're not limitless. Patterns tend to overlay with other patterns, and it's like alchemy. When you take two opposite patterns and combine them, weird things can happen. What are you doing, cat? Hi, Theo. Theo. Yeah. It's just like cats. Cats have a lot of patterns. If you look at each individual cat, they have these cautionary signs that they don't want to get themselves into something that they can't get themselves out of. But how do they figure that out? How is it every cat, the first time you let them outside, they'll sit on the porch for like the first 2 or 3 days or under the porch, before they actually start going out. So even cats have a very good pattern recognition and that caution. I wouldn't say fear. Fear is kind of hard to discern sometimes. That caution can have little tendrils of fear, but the center part of it is caution. You go into prison. How are you going to use that potential? The main thing you're going to say is, I wish I wouldn't have done what got me in here, because now I can't do a damn thing with my potential at all. I can sit here and think, I can doubt, I can be as cautious as I want. None of it's going to do a thing, right? People that are in prison for life are more likely to learn than somebody that has like 2 to 5 years. I counted down from day 1800. 1800 days I counted down rather than focusing on getting smarter. I kept thinking everything was going to be the same after 5 years. My pattern recognition definitely was not evolved at that time. So how is it that we can feel like we're afraid of losing that love, and then we're cautious? And that caution can change things in us that other people notice and they think it's fear. So then their behavior changes because of what they think is fear in us. They start feeling that fear. It's like when I was at my last job and we had a door right next to us, and I would go out and, hit my vape once or twice. And all of a sudden I noticed this guy that had been in that position for 5 years. He wasn't a team lead. We didn't have a team lead back there. We all worked together. It was 3 of us. We just did our jobs and left. But the thing is, he started going out at random times having a cigarette. But not until I did. And I started thinking, did he do this before I came here? Because I've been here 2 months. I even worked back here 3 months the last time, and he never once went out at a random time and had a cigarette. Not until I started going out and hitting my vape. So this is what I call programming. That's more of a subtle programming because I wasn't doing it intentionally, but because he was watching me do what I do, watching me get away with it, he obviously had some sort of personality traits that connected to mine. It wasn't just mirror neurons. It was the fact that he was watching me, and monkey see, monkey do, right?